let us start off from where we left in the last video. So I'm just gonna go back to my ML app folder, and this is what we have. I will get rid of all these unwanted folders for now because it's better we create one by one rather than creating all at once. Okay. So I'll just remove the utils, the config, as well as the model. Uh, got rid of model as well. So we have the main file, and of course it is failing to get the functions. So for now, I'll just write one function, add numbers, return, okay, and then I'll remove this. And you already saw the payload was a class payload, and it was having inheritance from base. So from Pydantic import. You don't do anything now. I'm just gonna change all this in a while. Base model. Okay. So I'm going to inherit from base model. I'm going to say I have number one string and number two string. Okay. For now, this is what we had earlier. Okay. Now what I'll do is I'll just give you a brief of what we did in the last session. So let me open our local p. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. How to open training. In training, what we did was we had one file which we made for logistic regression. Okay, or you can take even the linear regression one. Even that would be fine. So for now, I'm going to show you how we can convert our POC to an application. Okay, so where is log? Yeah, logistic regression. Okay, so this was our file, and we took our data from weather training.data.csv as well as weather test data.csv. So what I did was the CSV file which you see, I kept it in a DB table. Now this is my local server, the Microsoft SQL server, and I created one table dbo.weather data, and I can show you. You can say new query, and I'm going to write select star from master.dbo. With the data, I think we don't have to use master. And then let us just want to show you how the data looks like in a table. Now it's the same data, whichever we had in Excel file. It's the same data that I have pasted, I mean uploaded into a server. Now if you want to understand how this is done, probably that's for a different session. But our agenda here is to use this database as an input rather than a CSV file. Now, because I do not have a database outside, I just created one SQL server in my local computer, and I uploaded my data to this particular table. Upload is simple, like you can just go and go into task and click on import data, and then you can give an Excel file where using which it will create a table and insert the data for you. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to use a SQL Server as an input rather than a CSV file. Okay. When when we create an app, just make sure that we have to create all the folders in a segregated manner. So the input is the first thing that I will be using. So what I'll do is I'll create one new folder called config. Okay. Under this config, I will have something like uh, let us say we have for connections we have connections.py. Okay, and then I will have input.py. I can also have a SQL file, .sql file if required. But for now, I'm gonna store all the variables in the input.py. Whichever is gonna be my input, I'm gonna put it here. And I will create one more file. Say new file. I'll say it is config.py. First, let us deal with config. Okay, I'll just go to main.py. I have this Pydantic base model and payload. So I'll just copy that and I will put it in config. Okay, and this payload was just used for understanding purpose, right? Now I'll train it. Sorry, I'll create a payload which will be used for my training purpose. So I'll say train payload, and I expect one information like source, and I'll say train boolean. Okay, I'm going to use this like I want to say my application from where should I consider the data. So whether it is DB, if it is DB, then go and take from the DB. If it is from maybe an S3 bucket, go and take it from the S3 bucket. Or else if it is from a CSV file, take it from a CSV file. Okay, I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to use this train, whether I should train the model or I should simply pre-process and save it. Okay, you can have any number of things based on your logic. Like I'm just talking out loud because my agenda is to show how an application is made. If we go into very much detail, I think the video will be very lengthy and you might lose interest in learning. Okay, so I don't want that to happen. So let us stick with these two variables for now. What I'll do is, now we have used this train payload. Let me import it into main because I want the payload to be checked if the payload is correct with our requirements or not. So how do you import? You'll say from config dot config. Config is a folder. Now second config is our Python file. Import our class. Okay, train payload. Okay, now let us say this will be our train payload. For now, I'm just gonna remove this because it makes no sense. I'll keep none so that you don't find any errors. Okay, I have a payload now. So far, so good. Now, what the next part is, I'm going to use in connections. Now, the config part is over for now. We can close this file. We don't need any further information here. Now, I'll go back to connections. Okay, before connections, I can also go to my input. I can say train data query equal to, I'm going to put my query as this. Okay, this is my input. And in my connections, I'm going to use import pyodbc. I think pyodbc is not installed, so let me go and install it. Pip install pyodbc. Right, it got installed. After you create a pyodbc, now what you have to do is you have to write the function for connecting to database. So def, my connection will be like this. Get MS SQL connection. I'm not going to take any inputs for now. I'm going to say connection is equal to pyodbc dot connect, and I'm going to use this. Um, this will be 1 minute. This will be this is the way you write uh, SQL server native client 11.0, and you have a semicolon at the end. This is going to be our local server, so it will be local db slash MySQL local db. The server is nothing but in your Microsoft SQL server, you have connection details. Now let us say if I want to go and connect it, so you will have a connection here. So it is local db MySQL local db, and it is going to use a Windows authentication. So we don't have to bother about because it is the same machine. It will not, it will not look for authentication. Okay, sorry, should not be this equal to, and yeah, and you have a database which is nothing but master. That's it, and then we will simply return the connection. We might get some errors, so what I'll do is I'll try to use try except now. Try, this is my try. I'm gonna check if I'm going to connect and return. If I'm unable to do it, I'll simply say except exception as E, print. Maybe you could use logger here. Error while connecting to MS SQL due to E. Okay. You already know the F string and all, so I don't have to go into that. But this is how you write a connection. And whenever we want to connect, we will just call this function and we'll try to connect to the SQL server. And once we have a connection, we can go and use cursor and execute if we want to make any changes to the source. Okay. So these are the new things. Once one file we had the query of whichever table that we want to connect to, and second is our SQL Server connection information, and third is a config. Okay, so far so good. Now this is all about config. Now what we'll do is we'll just go back to our main. Let me close these files. Okay, we'll go back to our main. Now I want, instead of add numbers API, I'm gonna say train model, and payload will be train payload. For now, I'll say return status success message model is trained and saved. For now, I'm just gonna write like this. Okay, and let me check if my app is working fine or not. So what I'll do is fast API dev main.py. Okay, now it's went there. Let me go and click on this. It's fine. Now I'll go. What was my endpoint here? Oh, I did not change this. My bad. The endpoint should be train. Let me save it one more time. You will have to wait for the app to get ready one more time. Yep, startup is complete. Now what I'll do is just say train. Oh, this is a post method. I'm sorry about that. So I will have to go to my Postman. And in Postman, as I said, we will need to change our input. Postman is always slow. Just hang on for a minute. Yep. Okay. So in Postman, I'm going to use train, but of course we'll have to change the body. This will be source, and it's a string format. Let us say I'll say it as dv for now, and then train true. Okay, this is boolean. Let me go and hit it and see what happens. Okay, so I'm getting the API. The API is fine, but of course it is not doing what we want the API to do. Now what I'll do is I'll just create one more folder. We are done with config. Let us create one more folder called model. Okay, and in model, I'm going to create a file train.py. Okay, in train.py, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start writing the code whatever I have developed. Say for example, if I go to my logistic regression, the first thing which I did was read underscore CSV and get the data from the CSV file. But in this case, we will have to connect to the SQL server and get the information. Okay, so let me write that. We can start off with train, and I can say it will take the payload as an input. If payload dot source is equal to db, dot lower db. Now what I want to do is I want to go and connect. So first let me import from config dot connections, import get, what was the model name? It's connections, get MySQL connection. Okay, so I'm gonna say connection is equal to get MySQL connection. Now I'll use pandas here. Import pandas as PD. I'm going to say data is equal to pd dot read underscore SQL. My connection is that. My query is equal to, we saved the query in inputs, right? We will have to import that as well from config dot say input import train data query. So this will be train data query. Okay, for now let us see if we get any data, and then we will try to move further. Okay, return for now I'm going to say success, and just going to see if this app is working fine or not. Okay, now what you have to do is we have to import this train function to our main file and assign it to our API. So what I'll do is from model.train import train. I'm going to call train here, payload. I'm going to pass that payload. I'll catch the response. RESP is equal to this, and I will do, instead of message, okay, let me keep the message. I will have one more like response. Here I can use a string response. Okay, this is our model. Now what I did is now I'm just trying to break my logic. Whatever I have done so far, I'm just trying to break it in pieces, and I'm going to execute one piece at a time. Okay, for now we are going to deal with just trying to connect to a local DB and get the information from there. Okay, now my app is up and ready. Now we will have to look at the logs because I kept the sprint here. You notice the sprint, right? The sprint is not going to come on your Postman. The print is going to come on the console. Only the response is going to come on your Postman. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to send that, and it broke. Okay, that's fine. So read SQL got Keyword argument query. Yeah, I made a mistake. Let me go to train. Oh, it should be the other way around. It should be query first, followed by con equal to con. My bad. That's gonna start one more time. Just for simplicity, it's better if I stop it because I have to look at the logs. Go to restart my application. Now it started. I'll go back to main. Now let us go and trigger it from Postman. I triggered it. It's doing something. So let's hope there is no error. Yeah, and it did. Now see, we connected to the local base server and I got the data. Now what we have to do, the next step, now we have the data, we have to repeat all those things which we did in this .ipynb file. So next thing what we did was we looked at data and we tried to remove all the null values by picking one column at a time. So I will take one more video around this. I'll keep the code ready so that I don't have to waste time in explaining how the code is written, because you can look at what the function is doing here. And then we'll see how we can use API to train the model and save it, and also use a saved model for prediction with one more API. So the third API will be for prediction, wherein I'll going to use the saved model that is stored in some kind of S3 bucket or some artifact file or a zip file. And then I'm going to use that model for prediction by using an API. Okay, that's all for this video. We'll touch base in the next one. Thank you.